Good morning, guys. I'm Sabrina. I am a junior biochemistry and molecular biology major. I am rushing to class right now. I'm applying to medical school this summer and I'm involved in on-campus research, so ask me any questions that you have. Bye! So as far as what my research actually is, on a bigger scale I'm working with Parkinson's disease, but on a much smaller scale I am working with proteins that affect endocytosis in the synapse of a lamprey as our model organism. So the other question that came up was, how did I get involved with research and what types of research opportunities are available? So for me, we have a newsletter available for biology and chemistry departments, and there was a new professor hired on. I was reading about her in the newsletter. I saw that she was involved in this really fascinating research that kind of had a medical application, which is something that I was looking for. And on the first week of the semester, I actually stopped by her office. I said, "Hi, my name's Sabrina. Here's my major. I'm really interested in what you're doing. Can I possibly be involved?" And things just kind of ran from there. She had me read a bunch of papers, and she ended up thinking that I was the type of person she wanted on a research project, and that's what we did. So I got a question about whether or not I thought studying biology or biochemistry was difficult. I think this is a very personal question, as in it really just depends on who you ask. Personally, I love my major. I have a lot of fun with it. I'm very interested in what I'm doing every day, and I don't find it too difficult because of that. But I do think that if maybe you picked a major you're not super comfy in, or if you just really aren't loving what you're doing, it is going to be difficult. Now, obviously, biology and chemistry are heavy science classes, so it is a workload that you're going to have to learn how to work with. But personally, I absolutely love it, and I do have a ton of friends that are in bio or chemistry majors, and they're absolutely in love with it. So as far as extracurriculars, I do volunteer at a local hospital near me, and I am shadowing every Tuesday. Not this week, so I can't bring you guys along with. But that's actually starting next week. I'm shadowing a new family physician that we have here in town, so I'm very excited to do that. So aside from volunteering and shadowing, I am a part of a bunch of different clubs and organizations here on campus. I'm actually a tour guide for my school, so I have a ton of fun doing that, and it's nice to kind of get out of the sciences every once in a while. But I'm also the secretary of ASBMB on my campus, so that's the Association for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, and we just kind of put together different types of events for my specific major, and I have a lot of fun with that as well. Another question was, do I find it hard to balance school and my social life? This is something I think is very common for people looking to go into a pre-med type of major. Personally, I don't. I think it's very important to be able to balance your school and your friends. If you're not able to have that good social life, it's going to be really difficult, personally, I think, to succeed. So basically, I just make sure that obviously I'm putting time in studying every day and on the weekends, but a lot of times on Sundays, I kind of chill out with some friends. Saturdays, I make time in the morning to go to a farmer's market with the people that I really enjoy being around, and that makes it easier later in the day to actually get something done. So as far as time management goes, I pretty much set up my day in my planner the night before. So I'll write in, I have an hourly planner, so I'll say from 8 to 9 I'm in class, from 9 to 10 I'm going to do a microbiology assignment or study for my exam on Friday, and then from 10 to 11 I'll do a different class subject, and after that I'll go to lunch. And I do find it very beneficial to plan all of that out ahead of time, otherwise I will never get anything done. So I go to a little school in Florida called Florida Southern College. We are a small private institution, and I think that has absolutely helped me with my relationships with professors, but also with getting that research opportunity. I'm actually applying to medical school this application cycle, which is a little scary. I have not taken my official Mcat yet, although I've taken a bunch of practice tests already, but I will be taking my Mcat in June. So a really good question is, how do you study for the Mcat while also taking classes? Personally, I think it's really helpful to be studying certain topics while taking the class. For example, right now I'm in a biochemistry class, And being able to study my textbook, study online resources, and also study the Mcat book really helps me put into perspective which information is the most important. So I would definitely say study your Mcat books alongside the classes you are taking for sure. It's also really important to be really good at time management. One of the easiest things for me to do, I think, is do most of my schoolwork and actual stuff for my actual classes during the school week and then on Saturdays, and then Sundays I tend to dedicate more towards Mcat studying. That way I can get everything done in 1 week and I'm still making sure I'm studying for the Mcat and getting ready for all my classes. So how did I decide to not take a gap year? This is a really important question and one that I've pretty much been asking myself for the past couple of years. Basically, I think that my application, whether or not it's strong enough, is something that I absolutely want to submit this year. I feel that my GPA is alright, my Mcat score will hopefully be alright, and I think outside of that I am a very well-rounded student and I think that I'm ready to apply by now. Now obviously if I don't get in this cycle, that is absolutely okay, and in that situation I will be taking a gap year.
While I have a little break from answering questions, feel free to follow me on Instagram. If you swipe up on this, I'll put my little Instagram link down there and you can just go ahead and follow me.
So one of you guys asked me if I had a job. I do. Like I said, I do give those tours on campus. I also work special events for that same organization and I am paid to do that. I'm also paid for my research. The best way to balance everything you have going on is, again, just more time management. It's actually really helpful to just talk to your parents. They've been trying to manage time for significantly longer than any of us have, so they do have quite a few really good tips. But other than that, just use a planner. I think they're the most helpful thing in the whole world, and they've saved me a lot of trouble. So a really good question was, how important is your GPA when you're applying to medical school? Now, obviously I'm not on a review board or anything like that, but I would like to hope that it's not the only factor that they're considering. Obviously they are going to be considering your Mcat score, your extracurriculars, your personal statement is a very, very big deal. So while I'm not saying it's completely vital to have a 4.0, I think you're going to need a pretty healthy size GPA. You're going to want to be in part of that like possibility range. So if the medical schools that you're applying to really want that 3.5 or their average incoming class has a 3.5, you're going to want to try to be around there. That being said though, definitely don't stress out if your GPA isn't exactly where you want it to be right now. I know I worry about that a lot when I was a freshman just because you don't have a GPA yet, so any grade that you do get kind of affects you pretty heavily. You have so much time to build that up until your junior year or whenever that is you decide to apply. And honestly, for me, I would like to go to a school that doesn't only care about the grade you got in class. I want them to care about how I did on the Mcat and how I do in other aspects of my life. So if your GPA isn't where you want it to be yet, just keep working. It's going to get better and you're going to do well. So the best study tips I can give you guys for those pre-med or just college classes are start early. One of you guys did say that in high school you pretty much study the night before for your exams. I was the same way. You cannot do this in most colleges. There is going to be significantly more work, significantly more topics covered on each exam, and it's not realistic to be able to get that all done in one night and be very successful. I tend to try to start light studying 2 weeks before each exam, and then the heavy studying starts the week of the exam. So for example, I have a microbiology exam this coming Friday, so I started to review lecture topics last week, and then now I'm going over more of the review topics that were given to us, and I'm going to work through some practice problems, and that's pretty much going to be what I do for that exam. I think another study tip I can give you guys is really just read the textbook. Generally, your professors are going to pick those books because of a reason, and because they're good, they're not trying to make you fail. And even though reading them can be kind of tough, working through them and taking notes on the chapters that you will be tested on is very, very, very beneficial. And again, don't just read them. To me, I like to work through it, take notes on what seems really important to me, and that has been working out for me pretty well. One more really quick question before I head off to a meeting. Somebody did ask me how to keep up if a professor runs their lecture too quickly and you can't take down all the notes on the slide. This is actually such a good question, and this was a question I came into college wondering a lot about. A lot of my professors will actually post the lecture afterwards, and if yours don't do that, I'm sure if you ask, they would go ahead and try to post that up for you. But basically, if there's a slide that was run quickly, one that maybe I wasn't able to write down everything for, I'll just put a little star next to it in my notes, leave a bit of room, and when you get home and that lecture is posted, you can make sure you go through, look at any starred area and find those lectures online. That way you can get all of those notes ahead of time. Otherwise, in those lectures that are just too fast, you can always ask your professor to slow down. It might be a little intimidating to do if you do go to one of those larger schools, but they are there to help you learn and they want you to succeed. So if you say, hey, maybe you're moving a bit too fast, they might be able to slow down for you, which will be something that's super helpful. And other than that, all I can really say on that topic is listen more to what the professor is saying rather than what is on the slide. A lot of times what I'll do for those classes that do have those lectures posted online, I take less notes of what's written on each slide, like typed up already, and more notes on what is either written in excess on the board or anything the professor is saying that isn't read directly off of the slide, because that's information that you really are going to need to know. Okay, so a question I just got was, have you taken biochemistry, and if so, how have you studied for it? I'm actually in my first semester of biochemistry right now. I had my first exam about a week and a half ago, and I have my next one early November. So basically the way that I study, again, like I said, I like to go through the textbook. I do take notes on every single chapter, and then I go through the lectures that my professor posts in class, and we have practice questions on Wiley, which is like our online homework assignment type situation. So there are practice questions there, as well as test prep and homework questions that are available to me, and I find practice problems super, super useful. So this is an example of some of my biochem notes. As you can see, this was from chapter 3. So I like to draw pictures. The gray is what I find important when I'm reading the book, and then the pink is what my professor reiterates while we're in class. So these are just some of my notes. As you can see, I put some question marks where I have questions, so I can ask those in class to make sure I'm actually understanding what's going on. And they're not super detailed, but I'm definitely making sure to get some from each section. So there's 3.1, there's 3.2, there's a little bit more of 3.2. So it's kind of up to whatever you think needs more attention, and then generally your professor will cover that in class. So a couple people were asking what planner I used. I picked up this little day designer from Target. It was probably like $12. It goes for the school year, and I like it because it has kind of a monthly view, but then it also has individual days, and as you can see, the days go by hours, and then they have a little to-do list, your top 3, little gratitudes, things that you're going to do tonight, and then a cute little quote in the corner. And again, I just bought this at Target. So I was getting questions about my schedule, so I figured I would show you guys what today kind of looked like for me. As you can see, I have American Horror Story on here because you need to have a bit of a social life. But now it's a little after 4 o'clock. I just got done with one of my last classes today. So as you see, I plan by hour. I'm going to do microbiology from 4 to 5, then I'm going to start on biochemistry, do some lab work, and then just kind of repeat. Within there, I will be taking a couple of little breaks, but I really like to switch things up like that just because I find that it makes studying a little bit more exciting and interesting to me, and if I ever get bored of a topic, I can just switch out and work on something else. So these are some of the classes I've taken so far. I really only included a lot of my science-y classes. I am getting a minor, so a lot of those classes I didn't really include because they're not as typical. But freshman year, I took General Chemistry 1 and 2, Biology 1 and Zoology, so at most schools that's probably Bio 1 and Bio 2, and then a couple English classes. My sophomore year I took Organic 1 and 2, Physics 1 and 2, a Biostatistics class because we had the option of regular statistics or biostatistics. I took a Genetics class, and then this year I am taking Biochem 1 and 2, Microbio, Cell Bio, a Psychology class, a Medical Terminology class, and a Practical Chemistry course. So I ended up choosing Florida Southern as a small school just because of the size, pretty much. I knew I didn't want to go to a big school. It made me pretty nervous. My high school was also pretty small, so I kind of wanted that focused attention that Florida Southern could give me, and that was pretty much the deal there. I got to see how cool the professors were with different students and how close professors actually are, and I wanted that relationship with the people that are teaching me, and that is something I have now. I actually I went and got dinner with my research professor once. I had coffee with my organic professor, and that's just something that happens here. So the small school life happened to work out for me, but it is not for everybody, just as big schools aren't for everybody. So I don't actually think that there's a massive difference between state schools and private schools as far as who does the best for pre-medical students. I think it really is depending on what you do with your education. I think most pre-med classes are generally the same. You're going to be taking your biology classes, your chemistry classes, and you're going to have to get all of those out of the way. And whether or not you go to a smaller school or a big school, whether it's private or public, you're going to have to do all of that still. As far as extracurricular activities, I do think as far as pre-med goes, there might be more opportunities available at a larger school, but I also find it a little easier to get involved at a smaller school. So that really is up to you, and it really is up to the type of college you would like to attend, and that kind of helps you decide what's going to be best for you as a pre-medical student. So I was asked whether or not I was a research assistant. This is a question I'm not 100% sure how to answer. Basically, the professor that I worked with chose 3 students, and we each have our individual projects that kind of underlie the research that she's been doing before. So as I was saying, we all work with proteins in the synapses, so each one of the 3 of us has a different protein that we work with. And by working with that in lab, we're pretty much running gels, we're running Western blots, we're doing a lot of those protein purifications, stuff like that you would generally see in a biochemistry lab is what I'm doing. So personally, I think organic chemistry is a little bit overrated in the sense that people are saying it is so hard. I think it's different, and I do think it's difficult, but for the most part, I think it's a really beneficial class. It absolutely helped me with different study techniques. That's where I learned how to study the most. That's where I learned to read out of the book, to take notes like that. That's kind of where all of those techniques came from, because that is kind of what you have to do to be successful in that class. You have to put in significantly more time than you ever had to before, but I think as long as you do that, it's not too bad of a class for a science major. I always found it pretty interesting, and I didn't think it was too awful. So I am off to go study a bit more, but keep leaving me questions and I will answer them when I'm back, and before I log off this account. Also, follow me on Instagram. Just swipe up. Before I go, one last really important question. This person asked, what do you want to specialize in? I am thinking either pediatrics or cardiology, or pediatric cardiology. I do have a lot of personal experience with both of those. I also have a lot of shadowing experience with both of those, and I am absolutely in love with them. So I'm really reaching towards those two. So I got a really good question about maintaining relationships while being pre-med. One of the things that I think is the best about my boyfriend and I is that we are both pre-med. Right now he's a little bit more pre-PT, but it's basically the same type of situation. So we're both very focused, and we realize when the other person has to study or has to work or has to do something else. So it's really important to kind of know that you should be spending time with that person, obviously, if you are in a relationship, but it's totally okay to not spend all of your time with that person, which is also really, really important. So one of you asked if I thought it was beneficial to study the day before an exam. Absolutely, as long as that is not your only studying. As long as you have been studying before then, I think it's really, really beneficial to read ahead for that exam, to kind of push that information into your head that last time, and make sure it's actually there, even if it's just reviewing the notes you took to prepare for the exam or something like that. That'll be super, super helpful, so that when you wake up the next morning or the next day, you're able to sleep on that information, you have it in your head, and you're ready to go for that exam. So one of the questions was, do I live independently, and do I think that the medical field or studying to be in the medical field is conducive to living independently? I do not live independently. I live in a school-owned apartment with 3 other roommates, one of which is pre-vet, the other is going to a master's program, and the other is pre-med with me. So I think either way, it wouldn't necessarily change a lot. It could be a little bit more helpful if maybe you just really, really wanted things to be silent. But if I really need things to be silent, I can either go to my own independent room, go to a library to study, or do anything like that. But I think either way, whether you are independent or not, as far as your living situation, you can absolutely succeed no matter what. So one of you guys asked me how I could be applying to medical school if I'm only a junior in college. So basically how this works is you are going to apply, if you apply in a very, very traditional, straight out of undergraduate type of way, you are going to apply the summer after your junior year of college. And this is because by the time you are getting those interviews, by the time you're getting the decisions, you'll be in your senior year, and that will allow your beginning start date for medical school to be the following year after you graduate college. So generally for medical schools, they're going to want 40 to 100 hours of shadowing experience, and then between 100 and 400 hours of clinical experience. So I was asked if hospital volunteering is considered a clinical experience. Personally, I think so. I really hope so, because that's how I consider it. But yeah, I would definitely say yes, you are in a clinic by being in a hospital, you are getting that experience. So I do think whether you're volunteering or shadowing, you are absolutely getting that experience. So as far as studying for the Mcat goes, I use these bad boys. These are the Princeton Review books, and I have like the most recent ones that they have out. I do have a ton of friends that use the Kaplan books, and I know they say those are super great too. The only thing I have heard is that Princeton has a ton of information, and Kaplan makes things a little bit more simplified, so it's really up to however you're wanting to learn that. As far as studying for the Mcat, I know there was some confusion with me saying study alongside your classes. Basically what I mean with that is I would recommend getting your Mcat books your freshman year of college, and when you're learning biology for the first time, go through your biology book, see what you understand, see what you don't, and like maybe before an exam, go over those topics in your Mcat book just to see like some more information.
Alright guys, so this is the end of my pre-med takeover. It was so much fun answering all of your questions and getting to hang out with all of you guys. And as I've already said twice today, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. Just swipe up and I'll put it there again.